years ago, I gave a talk to some school children, and they were aged 4 to 11 years old. And during my diversity talk, I asked them the question, how many of you think the role of a judge is a man's role? 99% of them put their hands up. I then proceeded to ask, how many of you think the role of a lawyer, a CEO, a manager is a man's role? The same response. They all thought these roles were performed by men and not women. When I informed them that these roles were actually performed by men and women, they were shocked, surprised, and I was just as shocked and surprised because I couldn't believe that children as young as 4 years old could not believe that a woman could perform these roles. And this highlighted the need, when we talk about diversity, this highlighted the importance of actually having our conversation start early on and with our next generation. Now, I've been involved with diversity for 10, 20 years now, helping to try to close the diversity gap. And one of the crucial questions which still remains is, how can we close the diversity gap at a faster pace while helping to change the world at a faster pace for the better too? Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the term diversity, an example is where you have a man and a woman and they are performing the same roles, but yet the man is getting paid more than the woman. There is something in the UK, or across the world, called the gender pay gap. And in the UK, the gender pay gap date is on the 10th of November, and this year it was the 10th of November 2018. And this date is when women essentially work for free. This is where they are not getting paid the same as men, and there are different reasons for this. Sometimes this is when men and women are performing the same roles, but other times this is where men and women are performing different roles at different levels, and this is where the gender diversity gap comes into play, where men have more senior roles than females. There are some statistics in the US that show that 1 in 5 women are in senior management roles. 1 in 25 women of color who look like me are in senior management roles. So when we talk about diversity, we're not just talking about gender, we're talking about race, we're talking about disability, we're talking about age, LGBT, social mobility, and so on. Now, in the UK, I get asked to appear on many UK breakfast primetime shows and in the news as well to talk about diversity and to offer my opinions on how can we close the gap at a faster pace. There are 2 steps that I will share with you today, and the first one is to engage our next generation. The second is for us to engage men. It's for us to engage everyone in the solution. Now, one of the things that I did was launch a foundation a few years ago, over 3 years ago, and it's called the Miranda Brawn Diversity Leadership Foundation. And what we do, we help to close the diversity gap. We help to work with our next generation of leaders. We give scholarships, and we have our scholarship leaders on the photos now. But within the scholarships, it's not just funding, it's work experience. It's providing mentorship and sponsorship as well. These are all very important things in order for our next generation to succeed, and it's been proven very successful in terms of building their confidence, having them have the self-belief to know that when you look at a 4-year-old or a 4 to 11-year-old who doesn't believe that they can succeed or become a judge or a lawyer. It's giving them the confidence and showing them who the role models are. Because if you don't see people doing these roles, especially women, it's hard to visualize that you can become that as well. So we also help from that situation. But the main idea today is equality. It is to help promote an equal and diverse workforce. And this is one of the ways in how we can help close the diversity gap. So I've mentioned the statistics in terms of 1 in 5 women are in senior management positions. And you might be asking yourself, well, why is this important for me? Why should I get involved? It's not just the right thing to do, but it is fast becoming one of the only things for us to do to help change the world and close the diversity gap. It is together that we can make this difference. It is not just for those who are activists and publicly talking about diversity, but each and every one of us can think about how can we make a difference. And there are many ways, and research has shown that when you empower women, when you empower people of color, when you empower people who are from an LGBT background, when you empower people that are from a diverse background, it helps to transform societies. And when you lift women and people of color and others from diverse societies, you help to lift humanity. And that is very important. How many of you here in the audience have sisters, daughters, friends that have daughters, godmothers, goddaughters, mothers? Raise your hands. How many people do? Exactly. We are all affected. We are all affected by gender diversity. And it is so important for us to help to make that difference. Nearly 50% of the world's population are women. So if we help each and every one of us, if we help to close the diversity gap, and if we help women and others from diverse communities succeed, we're actually helping not only the global economy, but we're helping with the world and making the world become a better place on a positive basis. Now, you might be asking yourself now, well, how can I make a difference? I don't have time, I'm not an activist, I can't launch a foundation. How can I make a difference? Well, the first step to any issue is to acknowledge that there is an issue. And then it's to talk about it. It's to have these conversations. It's to have these conversations, and it doesn't have to start in the workplace or in your educational environment if you're still at university or at school. But it's to have these conversations with your friends and family. And what are your views on diversity? Do you agree with it? What ideas do you have? If you can help one person after today, just one person, if you can perform just one kind deed, you are helping to close the diversity gap. You are helping to make that difference. And that is so important. So I've mentioned that there are 2 steps to help close the diversity gap. And the first step was to help the next generation. And through my foundation, we have helped to raise the self-belief and confidence with our next generation to the point where they weren't able to get jobs, or they weren't sure in terms of what qualifications they should be aiming for. And it's highlighting who are the role models, what sector, what industry do you want to get into? Let's help you become a success. But not only that, the foundation that we have is also to raise the diversity issues that we have within the workplace. And it's to listen to our next generation. And it's to say to our next generation, we know that there is a pipeline issue. And the reason why I launched the foundation was because there were lots of organizations who are focused on how can we close the diversity gap, who is already in the existing workforce, and how can we help to close that gap with our current employees. And one of the ideas that I had is that if we have a talent pipeline issue, we need to start before they enter the workplace. We need to go back to those that are at university, those that are still at school, the 4-year-olds, and we need to help raise their aspirations. We need to change those beliefs, and this is what the foundation is doing. So we need to change the beliefs from where a 4-year-old believes that they can't become a lawyer or a judge to that they can. And a simple example happened today. A dear friend of mine is in the audience, and I gave her daughter today a doll. And it was a doll that looked like her. It was a doll of color, but it was a doll that was a scientist as well. And when I gave her the doll, she was so excited. And it warmed my heart. And I said to her, do you know that women can become scientists too? And guess what her response was? Yes. And I just thought, wow, we're changing the diversity. This is how we can close the diversity gap. From just sending out these messages, it can happen in the playground. It can happen in the homes by just giving the next generation, giving a child a doll. And it can happen to boys as well, not just girls, where you can show the boys that girls can also become scientists, so that once they enter secondary school, university, this is something that's a reality. So one of the other things that I do is that I give various talks to lots of schools, universities, and organizations, and I attend lots of diversity events. Not just gender diversity events, but events relating to race and LGBT and so on. And then the second step, in order to help to close the diversity gap at a faster pace and to help to change the world, is to involve men. Now, when I attend diversity events, for example, the last gender diversity event I attended, I was actually a speaker. And I spoke at UK Parliament, and I spoke for their women's networking group. And the chair of that women's networking group was a man. Now, this is a different way. This is a way of doing things differently. Because usually when I go to women's networking groups, the chair is female. But this is a way where we can include men into this. This is not just a women's issue. This is not just an issue where women or people of color are having to figure out how do we close the diversity gap. The only way that we can do this is together with each and every one of us. So with this gender diversity gap, and when I talk at various diversity events, I like to count how many men are in the room. And 9 times out of 10, when I do give a talk, and there are women in the room, there are only a handful of men. So it's important for us to include men. Invite them to these events. Find out what their ideas are. We all have male mentors who can help to change the behaviors within the workplace. All of this is important. I've had male mentors who have helped me, who have hired me, promoted me, and who have helped me succeed. I think it's through including men how we can really help to make a difference. Now, helping one person or one next generation or one woman or one person of color or one person from a diverse background, that's not going to change the world, but it will change the world for that one person. And if we think about one of the world's pressing needs at the moment is justice and equality, how can we close this diversity gap at a faster pace and help to change the world at a faster pace? It is through togetherness. It is through each and every one of us, through one kind deed at a time, through helping just one person at a time. That is how we're going to help to close that diversity gap. And this is regardless of your gender, your sex, your race, your social background, your disability, regardless of that, this is how we are going to change the world. And we all have a voice, and we all have the power to make a difference and to help change the world. So why not join us and be part of that solution? Thank you so much.